Hi, Rubal.
Hey, Lisa, good to see you.
You too.
So give me like 30 seconds to come back to my magic. All right, back. Okay, cool. You ready to be interviewed by me?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Look, here's my book. Isn't it pretty?
Oh, it is so pretty. It is so pretty. Okay. So, today I'm very excited to interview Lisa Campion. She's my friend and she's my client and an exciting, amazing human being. She has many best-selling books on her name. The Art of Psychic Reiki in 2018, which became an international bestseller. It became a bestseller kind of all over the world. And Energy Healing for Empaths, 2021. And then she's releasing this new amazing book called Awakening Your Psychic Ability this year. And possibly when you're listening to this and watching this, she has already released this book. So I'm pretty excited for today. And I wanted to ask you some questions about who you are and get to know about how you came to be as a spiritual teacher and go from there. How does that sound?
It sounds great. Thanks, Rubal.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. At the age of 14, or when you were a teenager, you happened to meet Mahashi Yogi, who started Transcendental Meditation. So what was that experience of meeting Mahashi at such a young age? And how was your teenage life? Like, how was it different? And how was that whole experience?
Yeah, that was one of the pivotal moments in my life. And actually, I was younger. I was only 10 when I met him. And because it was 1974 and my parents were hippies. And if you were a hippie in 1974, you learned TM, you learned Transcendental Meditation. So my parents took us, and I had no idea what was going on at 10 years old. But it was incredible because Maharishi then, took everybody one at a time into a back room, and he did Shaktipat. So he did, gave us an initiation, and he was speaking to me through his translator, and he was kind of like blah blah blah. He was talking about it, and all of a sudden he looked at me. He was like, and he really looked at me, and he said, "Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry. Like, if you had grown up in my country, we would know what to do. But you're growing up in America, and they don't know what to do with psychics and spiritual people." He said, "You really have a gift, and your childhood's going to be difficult, but you need to hang in there because you're going to help a lot of people when you become an adult." And I had no idea who he was.
You're only 10. You're only 10.
I mean, I was 10, and. Yeah. Back then he was just sort of gaining in popularity anyway, here at least. And then, but it was an incredibly meaningful conversation for me. Like, he was one of the first adults that ever kind of talked to me on that level, that ever really like acknowledged that, because mostly I was told it was very psychic. I was seeing things, I was experiencing things other people didn't. And most people just sort of patted me on the head and said I had a really good imagination, and didn't take me seriously. And he was one of the first people that did. Then I went to college and I studied comparative religion, and the penny dropped. I was like, oh my God, that was Maharishi. Like, I didn't like get the significance of who he was until I was an adult. But I never forgot that conversation. It was a really life-changing and life-affirming conversation for me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. That's a beautiful, serene, amazing experience that most people would love to have. And I'm so happy that you are able to appreciate that later in your life. So when was the first time you experienced this psychic abilities, and how did you feel about it at the time when you had this happening as you started growing?
I think I was born psychic. I know that I was. So my very first memory ever was when I was lying in bed and I was in my crib, and there were all these all these beings of light standing around me. They were all like glowing, luminous, and they were blowing me kisses and waving at me. And the room was full of this like light. And then my mother came into the room, opened the door, came into the room, and they all disappeared. And that is my very first memory of ever. So I have always had this ability. I've always been able to see. I'm a visual psychic. So I see colors around people. I see spiritual energies. I see spirits like angels and, people have crossed over. I feel things and know things. So I have always had that, but I was born in the 60s and grew up in the 70s and 80s just outside Boston. And back then there was no talking about this. There were no books on this topic, no psychics on TV, no internet. Think about that. So I just was searching.
No internet at the time? Okay, I didn't know.
I was searching the library. No, I was searching the library for books to read, and there was nothing. And it was difficult. It created a lot of like friction. I spent a lot of time trying to just pretend to be normal in public and try to figure out what the experiences I was having. But then I went to college. It was sort of the new age. It was the dawn of the new age. And all of a sudden there were books and there were teachers and classes that I could take. And I started working as a psychic when I was 19, but and I've never done anything else except for writing too. This has been my whole life. And now I feel really passionately about helping other people that are going through a spiritual awakening, as many, many people are, because I didn't have that help. So I wrote the books that I was looking for in the library, became this teacher that I wanted to find when I was 19 and couldn't find. So I feel like it's been a crazy, difficult journey, but it's also given me a lot of motivation to help other people.
Beautiful. So one of your trainings that you give for like really spiritual teachers, you teach a lot of spiritual teachers, a lot of people who are awakened and people who are like awakening their psychic abilities, and then a lot of empaths as well. And one of your teaching I was listening to, you talk about a story, a Wendys story, right? So probably quite a few years after that, after you started practicing psychic Reiki and teaching people or helping other people, you talk about this Wendys story. I don't want to spoil the story, so go ahead and share your story and tell me about the story from a context of, was that your moment of finding your mission? So tell me about it, please.
Yeah, that was another really pivotal moment in my life. And it was about 20 years ago, maybe, yeah, it's about then. And I was going through a pretty rough divorce. So I was a single mom staying at home. And I had some clients I was seeing, like I was doing psychic work more as almost like a hobby, or kind of very part-time, because I was with my kids. They were really little. And then I got a divorce. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need a job. Like I need to get it. I sent resumes out. I tried to get a corporate job, but I'd never worked for a corporation. So how was I going to get a corporate job? And I was like, I just have to do something. And I was really about to give up on this dream of helping people, of being a psychic teacher and working in the industry. So I went to Wendys to just fill out a job application. And I was sitting in a corner. I was kind of like hoping that nobody, recognized me. And I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to do this? And I was filling out this paper application and just crying, like this little teardrop like rolled off and splashed on my application. And it was this moment, I realized I was at a massive choice point in my life. And in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to do whatever it took to dedicate myself to becoming a spiritual teacher and a healer. So I ripped up the application and threw it in the trash. And I put a deposit, scraping change off the floor of my car practically to put a deposit down on my very first office. And then I started seeing clients. And really quickly after that, built up a full-time private practice of doing energy work, counseling, spiritual counseling, and psychic work. So it was a big leap of faith moment for me, of really putting my, knowing in my soul it was going to work, even though my personal self didn't know how I was going to do it. But I'm so glad I did, and now I really like to help other people that are at the same crossroads.
Beautiful. So 20 years fast forward, you helped thousands and thousands of people find their clarity and find their purpose and find meaning in their gifts. And then your list of people in different parts of the world are growing and growing, and you're helping more and more people. So at this point, you're releasing this book called Awakening Your Psychic Ability. And so you wrote like 2 books that became bestseller. And then now you're releasing Awakening Your Psychic Ability. What is so unique about it? Why should I read that?
Well, I feel like it's perfect if you're a person who's undergoing some kind of psychic opening, you know, like maybe you've done some Reiki classes or some yoga or some meditation. Though I always think of those things as the 3 gateways to opening people's psychic ability. Or maybe you're a person who really wants to open your psychic ability. It's just not happening for you. Like you wish that was happening for you. So I think the 2 people who would read this book are the people who are undergoing a psychic opening already and are confused, lost. Maybe they're feeling like a little bit like they're crazy, or they're worried other people are going to think they're crazy. And it can feel that way. It can be very disorienting. It's frightening if we're having psychic experiences and we don't know how to control it, or we don't know how to turn it off. We don't know if we're safe or not, you know? So it's super important if you're at that point to get training, or maybe you wish you had more. And it's really a beautiful thing actually to develop our psychic ability, because when we do, we can tap into a kind of guidance that can help us navigate the really difficult times in our life, to help us, you know, it's a tricky world out there. And when we're tapped into our intuition, we get guidance that can guide us more on a soulful path, a soulful journey in our life. So either way, this book is going to work for you.
Amazing. So what do you say to people? And I want to talk about like people who are awakening their psychic abilities, but let me play angel's advocate and ask you, for those people who don't believe in psychic abilities, and people who think that, okay, this is like, maybe this is like something else, like it doesn't make sense to me. What do you say to them? What are we missing?
That's a great question, Rubal. Thank you for asking it. So first of all, I really respect skeptics. Being skeptical just means you're smart and you're thinking for yourself. And I'm not sure I would fully believe in all the things that I write about, except they've all happened to me. You know, they're a part of my personal experience. So I feel like skepticism and like healthy skepticism can be a safeguard to help us, you know, practice discernment. And the other thing I would say is that really everyone is intuitive and everyone is psychic. I just think we have a lot of myths and misconceptions about what it really means to be that way. We watch movies, horror shows, and paranormal TV and things where psychics seem so strange, so different, so tortured, you know, they're being haunted by some horrible demon or something. And so it seems unusual and strange, but really it's very normal and usually woven into our everyday experience in a very seamless way. So if you've ever had like a really strong first impression when you've met somebody, you've had a psychic experience. If you ever had a dream that came true, you know, dreamt something before it happened. If you've ever heard the phone ringing and you're like, that's my mother calling, or you even, before the phone rings, you like, the phone's going to ring and it's going to be my mother, you know, like we've all had these experiences. And so being psychic is so much more normal and everyday. And, you know, it's just not like what we see on TV.
Got it. In fact, I read a lot of biographies growing up, 14 to 16, and that actually shaped my life a lot. And one of the biographies that I was born as a Catholic, and so I read a lot of Catholic saints biographies because they are the extreme different people. And I read in like Don Bosco was a Saint Don Bosco, the Don Boscan that you know, an entire, you know, congregation is built on his name. And he had in his biography, I read about him having visions of like this monstrous creature sitting next to him, and then he was like praying whole night, and this species is sitting next to him. He could actually see that, and then he will be praying for the whole night. And I always thought about it as like, hallucination or something. Maybe he's hallucinating and seeing these things. And what does this mean if somebody sees something like that? Or an angel, you were mentioning you are seeing good angels loving and hugging and kissing you. What does that mean? And what is your explanation for something like that? Somebody seeing a bad or negative or good or bad creatures?
Well, I think when we open our psychic abilities, we see into like another dimension. It's really the astral plane, and it's the dimension that's just next to ours. Children see it all the time. And you ever wonder why like your cat is like watching somebody walk across the room, or why your dog is, or why little kids do that? Because they can perceive in these slightly different dimensions than we. That's where ghosts and spirits and angels all exist, in that other place. And when we tap our vision, we can see all of it. And I think we live in a dual world, a world of polarity. So if we have angels, we have something that's opposite that as well. And I think that's a lot of reason why people shut down their psychic ability, because they're afraid. They think if they open, they're going to see bad things. But I've never been afraid of spirits, Rubal. I'm often afraid of actual real people. Real people scare me on a regular basis, but spirits never did, even when I was a kid.
Okay. Okay. So this is not, and then fear might be another factor, because I studied I had, when I was in India, and I was born in India, hopefully you can sense it from my British accent, is that when I was in India, there was a priest who actually, basically the idea was he would take out demons from people. Like he lived actually next, like 10 miles from my place. So I always thought about it as like alternate personality syndrome, or something like a multiple personality issue that he's resolving. And I read a book about him, and he wrote a book about how he did this. And when I analyzed the book, I sensed that people were connected with this lower energy when they were fearful. Yeah. So when you don't have fear, you don't connect with the lower energy. Is that true?
It is true. So, when we have a higher vibration, that's when we're connecting with the higher energies. And this is a problem that sometimes new psychics can run into. And I see a lot of this with people who don't really believe in the paranormal. They don't really believe in psychic spiritual things. So sometimes they really play around. They get a Ouija board, or they decide they're going to do some ghost hunting, and poke around in that world. And you're going to find something if you do it. It's a bit like poking the hornet's nest to see if it's full of hornets, right? Yeah. And it can be, but when we aim higher, we don't have to look for the dark, scary things. Most of them we won't find unless we actually look for them directly. But I do think there are people that have mental health issues, or people that, are very addicted, sometimes attract lower entities, like lower energies. And it's a little bit of a chicken or egg thing in my mind. Do these lower beings hang around them because they're in pain, right? And they maybe don't have great boundaries. Or do they get that way because of those things are there? It's sort of like, it's a little bit of both. And as we do the inner work, the inner healing that we need to heal from trauma, to lift our frequency, to heal deeply inside, we don't attract those things around us anymore. So,
yeah. Question. So you said, let's try to bring in like two questions here. One is about, we want to talk about how to connect with enlightened beings that you talk about in the book. But before that, I wanted to ask you this question about, you said humans scare you more than spirit. Do you think being in association with some humans creates like low vibration and attract this spiritual energy that you don't want?
Of course. What is it? They say it's like you are like the vibration of the 5 people you spend the most time with, okay. So we have to surround ourselves by people with elevated consciousness, elevated, spiritual energy. Hopefully we have some people around us that are very high vibe. That's why I hang around with you, Rubal, because you're in that super high vibe category. And sometimes we can't help that. So we just don't know who we're rubbing shoulders with if we're on the train or we're at work or wherever we are. So we need a little good psychic self-defense, some energetic boundaries that can help us feel strong and hold our frequency even when we're out out and about, but for sure. And that's why also we call on the higher, like masters, prophets, and saints, angels. We want to call on these higher frequency energies when we're doing psychic work. Don't go with the Ouija board. Go talk to the angels instead, because you know you're in better hands there.
Got it. So let's talk about those. So you talk about Enlightened Masters in your book. And by the way, if you haven't checked out Lisa's book, go ahead and check it. It's an amazing book. I went through that and it's phenomenal. Awakening your psychic abilities. It gives you a lot of clarity about some of the alternative things. And even if you are a skeptic, just go through that for the sake of like getting to know a different perspective. You don't need to believe just because Lisa is saying it. Experience for yourself and understand the wisdom and make your own discernment. But it's a beautiful depiction of a new way of looking at things that was phenomenal. So with that being said, you talk about Enlightened Masters and this Enlightened Masters, one of the sentence that I noticed, I want to quote you correctly, is that they lived for multiple lifetimes. What does that mean, these Enlightened Masters like Christ or Krishna or Buddha or Muhammad or anybody else for that matter? They lived multiple lifetimes. What does that mean? And how do I connect with this Enlightened Master? So this way I could be in proximity with them and have a mastermind and have them in my director board.
I definitely recommend that you do that. So, I mean, I believe in reincarnation. I don't know if everyone does, but I do. And what I see and what a lot has been written about the masters, and a lot they have written about themselves, like, you know, you're reading the lives of the saints, you know, they say this, that, you know, our journey here on earth is about evolving and growing to the point where we become one with God again, you know, and the Enlightened Masters have finished their work here. They've resolved their conflicts and done the inner learning and resolved their conflicts with people to the point where they're fully one with God again. And then you kind of come off the cycle of incarnation and go into this work of helping the rest of humanity lift up and evolve through that same process. And we can call them in through prayer, by invoking them, you know, by praying. If you want to pray the rosary or say like whatever prayers, even if you're just like, oh, please help me, you know, Christ consciousness or Jesus, Mary, Buddha, Allah, you know, whatever beings you want to call forward, Krishna, Muhammad, all the ones you mentioned and many, many more exist out there. And they're really fantastic. For me, they're some of the best spirit guides that I work with, because they've been human. They know what it's like to have been human. They have deep compassion for the suffering of humanity and how difficult it is to be human. And we can also accelerate our spiritual evolution by walking in their footsteps.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. You mentioned also in the book that people have a natural resonance with one of the Enlightened Masters. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm a Christian, if I'm Catholic, and if I'm Hindu or if I'm Muslim, so I could still stay Muslim or I could still stay Hindu and still practice what you are teaching. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think so. You know, that this stuff is going to work regardless of what your faith tradition is. And I think we should hold on to our faith traditions. If they're meaningful and deep for you, then by all means stay within them. And there'll be plenty of ascended masters that are already inside your own faith that can really assist you. And it's so interesting. I worked with somebody recently who lived in Japan and grew up as a Buddhist, and she had a lot of Buddhist ascended masters around her. And then she was probably in her 30s. And then about halfway through her life, she started studying yoga, and she became very dedicated to the yogic tradition. And then she had newer guides that were more like the Hindu deities and ascended masters that were around her, because she had a guru and she was spending a lot of time in India, you know, so she had sort of these two casts of characters with her that, and I think if she picked up another religion and started praying and thinking about them and reading about them, you might draw in more, because I feel like any will come to us if we invoke them.
So if you invoke them and bringing that experience into your life, and then it doesn't have to be based on so these angels are not in fight with each other, like, you know,
No. They're not jealous. They don't fight. They're not fighting over you.
So the Christian angels are not in fight with the Islamic angels and the Hindu angels. They are all in harmony. So they are all working together as a protection for me, as long as I'm open to all of the consciousness and bringing my awareness to all of that. Just like the lady that you mentioned, she had Buddhist experiences with her, and then Hindu experiences, and so was other experiences as well.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
There's harmony in the cosmos mostly. It's like natural state is to be beauty, harmony, and order. And when we shift our frequency up by doing spiritual practice, we become also more full of beauty, harmony, and order inside of ourselves.
Got it. So you are speaking in the book about inner sanctuary. What is inner sanctuary, and how do I find my inner sanctuary in terms of making sure that I am in this joyful, peaceful place all the time?
Yeah, it's a great meditation that I do. And actually, if you go to my publisher's website, they have a recording of that inner sanctuary. And I do have some also on my YouTube channel. And it's just like it's sort of a peaceful place we have inside of ourselves that a lot of our meditations begin, So maybe you imagine you're sitting at a beautiful beach or a mountaintop temple, or it could be inside a church or a synagogue. It could be like a grove of trees. It could be in nature, it could be a place or a place that just appears in your mind. When you close your mind and when you close your eyes and you settle your mind, where do we go? And we can construct sort of an inner temple that we then invite our guides to visit us. We then receive guidance when we're in that place. So in the book, we work on constructing this sort of safe and peaceful zone inside our own minds, in our own being. It's sort of like, you can think almost like it's in this seventh chakra, like these upper chakras, that it exists there in our consciousness, basically.
Beautiful. So
and that allows us to connect to the higher realms.
Got it. So this is more of the metaphor that is coming to my mind is, this is more like a spiritual home for you.
Yes, that's
just
right.
Like we have a physical home, there's a spiritual home. Okay.
Perfect. I love that. That's exactly right.
That's beautiful. I love that. Okay. So couple of more questions, and this is really something important that I was always fascinated by, which is trees. I always trees, as in trees in nature.
Yeah.
So I try to connect with nature as much as I can. Every periodically I go for vacations, and whenever we go for vacations, instead of going, and although I live in Orlando, I haven't actually visited. I barely visited the Disney parks, and then Universal I haven't even visited. I always go on nature trips and spend time in water, connecting with trees. And always, whenever I go to nature, I feel relaxed, and then I come back totally fresh. So you talk about trees in awakening your psychic ability. You go into like using trees as a tool to connect with universe, connect with God. So explain that to us.
Yes, there's a meditation that you can do actually with a tree. You can imagine a tree if you don't have a tree nearby, but it's really beautiful if you can sit with an actual tree, go outside in your yard and sit with your back against the tree. And this is a very powerful way to ground and sort of open up our energy system. So we take a breath, we imagine our own energetic roots going down the roots of the tree. So we mingle our own energy roots with the actual roots of the tree. It can be very, very grounding for people that have difficult time grounding. And then we imagine our spine as the bowl of the trunk of the tree, and then our crown opening as the leaves of the tree. And when we do that, we can really activate our own energy system, open the chakras and activate them. And it's a beautiful way to ground yourself if you're having trouble getting grounded.
That's beautiful. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I love that entire metaphor. The trunk is your core, and the roots are your roots, and then the crown of the tree is your crown. That's fascinating.
It's good.
So another thing that I was fascinated in the book, Awakening Your Psychic Ability, is connecting with ancestors who could help us. So I was born in India, and of course, I don't know. I was born as a Catholic. Saint Thomas came to my state, Christ's disciple, and then got many of us to be Christians. And so, but even with that, maybe some of my ancestors could have been butchers and some of them could have been saints. So my question is, and no, there's nothing wrong with the butchers, but the point is that there are some people who might have been good people, some people who might not have been good people. So how do I connect with the ancestors? And this is something that I buy in with you in terms of, oh my gosh, I could actually sense the influence of our multi-generation in so many people that I'm working with. So I'm always seeing that. So how do I connect with those ancestors who are empowering me? And how do I probably disconnect or ignore those ancestors who are not being a good force for me?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to connect. I don't want to connect to the ancestor in my family that was like a pirate, axe murdering pirate, I'm pretty sure I had one of those. So what we do is we set our intention, just like in any other, when you're doing your meditation, maybe you say, I want to talk to Christ consciousness beings or above, or I want to talk to the people in my lineage that are going to support me. We just set our intention, and I don't want to connect with the people. Or maybe even the butchers might have something to offer you if you can filter, what the gifts that they had. Maybe they had strength for you. Maybe they had purpose. Maybe they had bravery, determination, fearlessness, or just the desire to survive. And we can collect the positive sides of those things, which maybe we need and we don't have, and filter out, I want to collect the strength, but filter out the homicidal, impulses of my pirate. I want the adventure of my pirate ancestors, but I don't want the homicidal mania of them, Yeah.
So you just want to filter out whatever they are good thing that you get. You want to finish something.
Yeah, no, that's it. Exactly what you said.
So let's say today, the person who's listening to this, if that person is probably, they see that they have a mission and they see that there is a purpose for their life and they haven't actualized their purpose. And they believe, just like you had a unique experience with Mahashi, they had an enlightened experience with somebody, or some parent, like family friend or somebody said, you are going to do something, or truly in their heart, they believe they are going to do something. But they are still sitting at the Wendys and filling their application form. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Wendys. They have amazing job and decent food, I guess. I haven't tried much. But if they are in that Wendys of life, confused in life, confused energetically, confused with their skill set opening up, the psychic abilities opening up, and they're confused about who they are, confused as they're scared, am I going crazy? I mean, what is about me? What's going on with me? What's wrong with me? First of all, do you have any tools? So definitely check out, if you are going through that experience, definitely check out all these 3 books and get it and read it. What other tools do you have in terms of helping them? If I want to drop in with you, what can I learn from you? Where can I learn from you? What do you have available that could help me navigate and find my purpose and move to the next level?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I have a lot of free resources on my website, lisacampion.com, and you can come there, and just tons of free stuff for empaths, for people who are wanting to learn to manage their sensitivity or open their psychic ability. I have a lot on my YouTube channel, so every day more and more. I'm posting things there, and I also have classes from anywhere from beginner classes to intermediate psychic development and even very advanced psychic development classes. So I can take you really wherever you're at. I can help you. If you're just a beginner starting out and you're freaked out and afraid, or if you really are already in this world and want more training. So stop by my website, give me a comment, send me an email. I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And thank you so much, Lisa, for your amazing answers. And this was a phenomenal read. It gave me a lot of clarity about this unique, different experiences that you are having and your clients are having. And that added so much to my perspective. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Rubel. It was my pleasure. It was lovely to see you again, as always.
Lovely to see you too. Thank you.